Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch One. Thanks for logging on. Today we're looking at a slightly different take on the IWC Big Pilot Top Gun. This is the Big Pilot Top Gun reference 5019-01. Now earlier we looked at the Top Gun chronograph, the Miramar tribute reference. This is the Big Pilot Top Gun in the Big Pilot format, more classically styled to represent IWC's 2002 to present Big Pilot series. It nevertheless includes a little bit of a nod and a wink and a tribute to the Naval Fighter Weapons School, better known as Top Gun. Now, 48 millimeters in black ceramic. I'm going to put it on the wrist and break out the fit and feel impressions here. It's 15 millimeters thick, which makes it a little bit thinner than the Miramar chronograph, and it does sit a little flatter. You can see that one was pretty flush to the wrist considering its size and girth. This one wears even easier. I gotta say that this is a very low profile giant watch, and at 48 millimeters it is giant, but it certainly doesn't ride high off the skin. And you can see in this profile shot, let me get you a good profile shot there, on my wrist, which is 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, it's comfortable. Ceramic in all of its forms is very light. The combination of ceramic and titanium with a textile strap, and I will note that it is a combination textile and calfskin leather here, but the combination of all those material elements means that the watch doesn't weigh a lot. As big as it is, you wouldn't know it. Eyes closed, it feels like it could be a 40 to 42 millimeter sports watch. You'd never guess that it's pushing 50. Sits comfortably. You can see that the lugs do span out quite wide, but again, it's not quite overlapping. I would say that 6 1/3, 6 1/4 inches is probably the lower limit for wrist size to comfortably accommodate this watch. But again, hot spots and mass will not be a problem because this watch really sits evenly, sits lightly, spreads its mass well, and it doesn't weigh that much at all. I'm going to talk a little bit about the dial because the dial is sort of a crossroads between the Big Pilot watch heritage and the little nod and the wink to the Top Gun school. And there's a further tribute on the case back, and I'll get to that in a moment, but I like to work from front to back. Looking at the dial, you can see it has that classic dashboard instrument style, the cockpit instrument that a pilot would have encountered at any point from the dawn of modern aviation in the 1930s through the end of the analog instrument era in the 2000s. Now they're pretty much all glass cockpits, think touchscreens, CRTs, LCDs, multi-configurable displays. But back when we were using old-fashioned steam gauges, this is generally the aesthetic, and anyone who's flown in the last 30 years in a Cessna will instantly be familiar with it. High legibility is the order of the day. Now this harks back to the 1940s B-uhr Type 52 TSC pilot watches that IWC built at the time. Those were over 50 millimeters, actually closer to 60 than 50. So IWC's actually scaled this one down to a more modest 48, if you can believe that. This is not a watch that is large because large is trendy, large is voguish, large is now. This is a watch that's large because that's the heritage of the type, and that's the heritage of the IWC pilot's watch. So John Mayer, if you're out there complaining about this watch, you have one less reason to gripe. I'd also like to mention that the watch is slightly refined from those early large pilot references because it adds modern complications that endow it with everyday practicality. Now you can see the date window at 6 o'clock. You might not catch it on first glance because it's low profile with a conforming monotone black date disc. It really disappears. It's the kind of thing you notice when you want to see it and don't notice when you would prefer it to blend in. Discreetly done, well done. I think that's a must-have on a daily wear or sports watch. The power reserve is a nice piece. Now the watch does feature a superb 8-day power reserve, of which 7 are usable. Why only 7 if it can hold 8 days worth of reserve de marche? Well, the reason is that IWC found out that its 50,000 series calibers could keep excellent time for 7 days of their power reserve, and while they would run for 8, timing would suffer after that 7th day. So they programmed the movement to lock out that 8th day, and they showed 7 days of power reserve on the dial power reserve at 3 o'clock. And again, the power reserve itself is fairly discreet. You can see it, it's color keyed, it's calibrated, but it doesn't jump out. It doesn't spoil the vintage style aesthetic. There is one more key element that I want to call out, and that is the counterweight to the seconds hand. You can see it's a discrete little arrow, but it is a fighter. You can see with the tail planes and the wings, the fuselage and the empennage assembly, it's sort of an interpretive impressionist aircraft, and it might not immediately be read as such by someone who doesn't know that this is a Top Gun tribute watch. It could be a stylized arrow or a spade, but it is in fact a naval fighter aircraft. In all likelihoods, these days, a Super Hornet. So the look is classical. The Top Gun cues are very discreet, and in fact, you don't get the full impression of the watch's source material until you flip it over. When you see the case back, and there it is. Now, I know that this is a little bit controversial. Some people feel that co-branding on an IWC is sacrilege. Personally, I don't see the problem. Porsche design. The bottom line is that every luxury watch manufacturer has some sort of history of co-branding, and when it's discreetly done, and let's face it, what part of this says Top Gun to you? When it's discreetly done, when it's tastefully done, when the company has an authentic aviation heritage and aviation tool watch heritage like IWC, I feel it's perfectly apropos, and the bottom line is, I think it looks fantastic. Some people say that sapphire display casebacks are overdone, and I'm beginning to kind of see along those lines. I'm seeing eye to eye with them. Clever treatments of caseback, colorful treatments of caseback, something more than just a rote window, that takes guts. That is, in this day and age, a bit avant-garde, and I like the way this is done. And as a former Navy guy, I don't mind the shout-out. This is an IWC pilot's watch first and foremost. It's a ceramic watch, nearly indelible. The ceramic case is almost as hard as sapphire and makes it nearly scratch resistant. So it's got the best of the pilot's heritage and modern materials technology. And because anyone who's into aviation probably at least thinks the Naval Fighter Weapons School is kind of cool. It's a great side story and a conversation piece for a fantastic execution of a neoclassical reference that has really become the face of the modern IWC catalog. I think historically, you might have said IWC was the ingénieur, maybe the Portuguese, but the modern ascendancy of the pilot's watch is entirely a result of the way IWC's pilot's references capture the imagination of the luxury watch-buying pilot. I feel that today, as of May 6th, 2015, IWC has a wind in its sails principally because of the energy and collector interest generated by the pilot's watches within its line. To me, the modern face of IWC is the Big Pilot, and this IWC Big Pilot Top Gun reference 5019-01 might be the poster child for the IWC pilot's watch. So you've got something that's almost the definitive version of an icon. Also, a complete set with factory warranty purchased at the IWC boutique. This watch comes with everything you would expect if you were to buy it new. It's a fantastic opportunity to own one of the most exciting and energizing references in the modern IWC catalog. See this IWC Big Pilot Top Gun reference 5019-01 on our website, Watch You Want.